So a man needs to take a flight. As he gets to his plane seat, he is surprised to find a parrot strapped into the seat next to him. Once in the air, the stewardess comes around and the man asks her for a coffee. The parrot meanwhile squawks, "And get me a bloody whiskey, you pig." The stewardess, somewhat taken aback, remains composed and brings a whiskey for the parrot, but forgets the coffee. When the man points this out to her, the parrot immediately drains its glass and yells, "And get me another darn whiskey while you're at it, you pig." Visibly upset, the shaking stewardess returns shortly with a whiskey for the parrot, but still no coffee. Unaccustomed to such slackness, the man loses his temper and decides to try the parrot's approach. "I've asked you twice for a coffee, you pig. Now go and get it, or I'll give you a slap." In a couple of seconds, two burly disguised security personnel grab both him and the parrot, take them to the emergency exits, and throw them out. As they are falling from the plane, the parrot turns to the man and says, "You know, for someone who can't fly, you've got a big mouth." So there once was a cruel king who enjoyed executing whoever he pleased. A minister once gave him wrong advice. The king decided to have him killed. He ordered that the minister to be thrown to the ravenous and vicious guard dogs. The minister said, "I have served you loyally for 10 years, and you do this?" The king was without mercy. The minister fell on his knees, pleaded, "Please give me 10 days before you throw me to the dogs." The king thought about it, weighed his curiosity versus his bloodlust, and finally agreed. In those 10 days, the minister went to the keeper of the dogs and told him he wanted to feed the dogs for the next 10 days. The guard was baffled, but he agreed. So the minister started feeding the dogs, caring for them, washing them, providing all sorts of comforts for them. When the 10 days were up, the king ordered that the minister be thrown to the dogs as sentenced. When he was thrown in, everyone was amazed at what they saw. The ferocious dogs were wagging their tails, playing with the condemned minister, and even licking his feet. The king was baffled at what he saw. "What happened to my vicious dogs?" he growled. The minister then said, "I served the dogs for only 10 days, and they didn't forget my service." "I served you for 10 years, and you forgot all of it at my first mistake." The king then realized his own great mistake. The next day, he replaced the dogs with crocodiles. So Ralph came home drunk one night, slid into bed beside his sleeping wife, and fell into a deep slumber. He awoke before the pearly gates where St. Peter said, "You died in your sleep, Ralph." Ralph was stunned. "I'm dead. No, I can't be. I've got too much to live for. Send me back." St. Peter said, "I'm sorry, but there's only one way you can go back, and that is as a lesser being, an animal." Ralph was devastated, but begged St. Peter to send him to a farm near his home. The next thing he knew, he was covered with feathers, clucking and pecking the ground. A rooster strolled past. "So you're the new hen, huh? How's your first day here?" "Not bad," replied Ralph the hen, "but I have this strange feeling inside, like I'm going to explode." "You're ovulating," explained the rooster. "Don't tell me you've never laid an egg before." "Never," said Ralph. "Well, just relax and let it happen," says the rooster. "It's no big deal." Ralph did, and a few uncomfortable seconds later, out popped an egg. Ralph was overcome with emotion as he experienced motherhood. He soon laid another egg. His joy was overwhelming. As he was about to lay his third egg, he felt a smack on the back of his head and heard his wife yell, "Ralph, wake up. You crapped the bed." So this is a story about a frog who had a unique and weird love in its heart for human women. He wanted to meet the princess to make him a prince. Course, no human girl will touch him. His frog relatives are weirded out and don't want to help him. Eventually, he hears of a psychic toad that lives not far away. He makes his way to him in leaps and bounds and finds him in a little bog. After much pleading, the toad reads his fortune. He tells him, "You are going to meet a beautiful young girl who will want to know everything about you." The frog becomes excited. "This is great. Will I meet her at a party?" "No," says the toad. "You will meet her in her biology class." So a man from the city was reporting for a job at a residential home and knocked on the door. The owner wasn't home, but his pet parrot was. "Who is it?" the parrot said. "It's the man from the gas company here to fix your pipes." There was no answer, so he knocks again. "Who is it?" the parrot said. "It's the man from the gas company here to fix your pipes," said the man, starting to feel annoyed. There was no answer, so he knocks again. "Who is it?" the parrot said. "It's the man from the gas company here to fix your pipes," said the man, starting to get a little angry. There was no answer, so he knocks again. "Who is it?" the parrot said. "It's the man from the gas company here to fix your pipes," shouted the man, now quite furious. So furious, in fact, that he suddenly had a heart attack and collapsed on the front stairs. The owners come home and are shocked to find a dead man on their steps. The wife says to the husband, "Well, who is it?" The parrot then replies, "It's the man from the gas company here to fix your pipes." So an old snake goes to see his doctor and says, "I need something for my eyes. I can't see very well these days." The doctor fixes him up with a pair of glasses and tells him to return in 2 weeks. The snake comes back in 2 weeks and tells the doctor that he's very depressed. "What's the problem?" asks the doctor. "Didn't the glasses help you?" "The glasses are fine, doc," answers the snake dejectedly. "Thing is, I just discovered I've been living with a garden hose the past 2 years." So an older, tired-looking dog wandered into my yard. I could tell from his collar and well-fed belly that he had a home and was well taken care of. He calmly came over to me. I gave him a few pats on his head. He then followed me into my house, slowly walked down the hall, curled up in the corner, and fell asleep. An hour later, he went to the door, and I let him out. The next day he was back, greeted me in my yard, walked inside and resumed his spot in the hall, and again slept for about an hour. This continued off and on for several weeks. Curious, I pinned a note to his collar. "I would like to find out who the owner of this wonderful sweet dog is, and ask if you are aware that almost every afternoon your dog comes to my house for a nap." The next day, he arrived for his nap with a different note pinned to his collar. He lives in a home with 6 children, 2 under the age of 3. He's trying to catch up on his sleep. "Please, may I come with him tomorrow?" So a guy walks into a bar with his dog and says, "I'll have a scotch and water, and my dog would like a whiskey sour." The bartender says, "Sorry, we don't allow animals in here." The dog replies, "Hey, I'm tired of being discriminated against. Just give me a drink." The bartender says, "Oh no, not another ventriloquist with the old talking dog trick. Both of you, get out of here." "No, no, no, this isn't a trick, I promise you," says the man. "I tell you what, I'll go for a walk around the block and you talk to Gizmo here." The man leaves and the bartender sees him turn the corner. "Now, "Can I have my drink?" asks the dog. The bartender is amazed. "Sure you can, and it's on the house. Listen, can you do me a favor? My wife works next door at the cafe. It'll make her day if you go in and order a cup of coffee. Here's $10, and you can keep the change afterwards." "Okay," says the dog, and he takes the $10 and leaves. 10 minutes go by, and the dog doesn't come back. The owner returns and asks, "Where is the dog?" So both of them go off to see what happened to the dog. As they approach the cafe, they see Gizmo going at it, hot and heavy, with a French poodle in the alley between the bar and cafe. The owner shouts, "Gizmo, what are you doing? You've never done this before." The dog shrugged. "Well, I've never had any money before." So one day, Bob decided to take a trip to the zoo. He strolled past the usual exhibits until he came to the ape cage. Inside was a huge male ape, just sitting there, staring right back at him. Bob scratched his head. To his surprise, the ape scratched his too. Well, this could be fun, Bob thought. So he scratched under his arms and hopped around like a fool. Sure enough, the ape copied him exactly. Laughing, Bob stopped for a moment, rubbing his chin as he tried to think of the next move. But before he could even react, the ape suddenly grabbed the bars of the cage, bent them apart like they were made of clay, leapt across the moat, and beat the living daylights out of him. A few weeks later, Bob finally woke up in the hospital, his entire body wrapped in traction. When the nurses noticed he was awake, they brought in a man, then left the two of them alone. "Mr. Smith," the man said kindly, "my name is Albert. I'm the zookeeper, and I'm here to figure out what exactly happened before the ape attacked." Bob groaned. I don't know. I was just standing there. The ape kept copying everything I did." Albert pulled up a chair. "I need details. What exactly did you do?" Bob thought. "Well, first, I scratched my head, and he scratched his. Then I started goofing around. I scratched under my arms, made a few monkey sounds, and he copied that too." Albert nodded. "And then what happened?" Bob squinted, trying to remember. "I think the last thing I did was scratch my chin." Albert froze. His eyes went wide. "Wait, you scratched your chin?" "Yeah," Bob said slowly. Albert let out a sigh of relief. "Well, that explains it. You see, in ape, scratching your chin means screw you. Thank goodness if the attack was unprovoked, we would have had to put him down." So Bob stayed in traction for another 6 miserable months. 6 months of lying flat, unable to move, scratch an itch, or even pee without help. By the end of it, he wasn't just sore, he was furious. And he had plenty of time to come up with a plan for revenge. The day he was released, Bob's very first stop was the butcher shop. He bought the biggest Polish sausage he could find, along with a pair of razor-sharp butcher knives. Then he marched straight back to the zoo. He walked right up to the ape cage, stared the beast dead in the eye, and sneered, "Remember me?" The ape perked up instantly, mimicking his posture like before. Bob smirked, tossed one of the knives into the cage, and raised his own high above his head. The ape copied him without hesitation. Then Bob reached into his pants, pulled the massive polished sausage through his fly, and held it proudly in his other hand. Sure enough, the ape followed suit, knife in one hand, his equipment in the other. With a wicked grin, Bob slashed his knife downward, slicing the sausage clean in half. He looked down at the 2 pieces on the ground and then back up, expecting to see the ape screaming in pain. Instead, the ape just stood there, calm as ever. And then, Slowly, the ape raised his hand and scratched his chin. So it was a bright summer morning in a huge Canadian national park. A group of ramblers had just gathered when the park ranger stepped forward to give his safety talk. He started off cheerfully. "Now, brown bears are usually harmless," he explained with a smile. "They don't want anything to do with people. That's why we recommend you attach small bells to your backpacks. The sound gives them plenty of warning so they can wander off before you get too close." The hikers nodded, relieved. But then the ranger's tone grew serious. "Grizzly bears, however, are a different story. They are extremely dangerous. If you come across grizzly bear droppings, I suggest you leave the area immediately." One hiker frowned. "But, how exactly do we know if it's grizzly bear droppings?" The ranger smiled knowingly. "Oh, that's easy. They're the ones full of little bells." So 2 crocodiles were lying by the riverbank. After a few hours of just lazing around, the smaller one turned to the bigger one and said, "I can't understand how you can be so much bigger than me. We're the same age. We were the same size as kids, I just don't get it." "Well," said the big croc, "what have you been eating?" "Mostly politicians that come here with their mistresses. Same as you," replied the small croc. Well, where do you catch them?" "On the other side of the river, near the car park." "Same here. Tell me your method. How do you catch them?" asked the big croc. "Well, I crawl up under one of their big Lexus, BMW, or Mercedes cars and wait for one to unlock the car door. Then I jump out, grab them by the leg, shake the crap out of them, and eat them." "Ah," said the big crocodile, "I think I see your problem. You're not getting any real nourishment. See, by the time you finish shaking the crap out of a politician, there's nothing much left but an asshole with a briefcase." So a man comes running to the doctor, shouting and screaming in pain. "Please, doctor, you've got to help me. I've been stung by a bee." "Don't worry," says the doctor. "I'll put some cream on it." The man replies, "You will never find that bee. It must be miles away by now." "No, you don't understand," answers the doctor. "I'll put some cream on the place you were stung." "Oh, it happened in the garden in back of my house," replies the man. "No, no, no," says the doctor, getting frustrated. "I mean, on which part of your body did that bee sting you?" "On my finger," screamed the man in pain. "The bee stung me on my finger, and it really hurts." "Which one?" asks the doctor. "How am I supposed to know?" answers the man. "All the bees look the same to me." So a man and his wife were spending the day at the zoo. She was wearing a loose-fitting pink dress, sleeveless with straps. He was wearing his usual jeans and t-shirt. As they walked through the ape exhibit, they passed in front of a large silverback gorilla. Noticing the wife, the gorilla went crazy. He jumped on the bars, and holding on with one hand and 2 feet, he grunted and pounded his chest with his free hand. He was obviously excited at the pretty lady in the pink dress. The husband, noticing the excitement, thought this was funny. He suggested, "Now, maybe pucker your lips and wiggle your bottom. See what that does." She played along and the gorilla got even more excited, making noises that would wake the dead. The husband then suggested she let one of her straps fall to show a little more skin. She did, and the gorilla was about to tear the bars down. "Now, show your thighs and sort of fan your dress at him," he said. This drove the gorilla absolutely crazy, and he started doing flips. The husband smiled sweetly at his wife as he opened the cage door. "Now tell him you have a headache." So a circus manager is busy tidying his office when a scrawny little guy walks in the door. He walks over to the manager and he says, "Are you the boss here?" The manager says, "Yeah." "What do you want?" He says, "I'd like to join the circus. I got an act." The guy says, "Oh yeah. Well, let me see what it is." So this little guy goes over to the center pole and he starts climbing up the pole, and he goes all the way up. He climbs up and up and up. He goes all the way up to the very peak of the big top, and he looks down and he takes a deep breath and he leaps off and he starts flapping his arms and he starts flying. And he flies all around the big top. He goes all the way around the place. He goes around the center pole. He goes loop-de-loop through the trapezes. Then he gets all the way up, and he takes a nosedive right down to the ground, flapping his arms like mad, and he lands right next to the boss. And he says, "Well, what do you think?" "That's all you do?" says the boss disdainfully. "Bird imitations." So two caterpillars are escaping a spider. They climb up a branch and get to the edge, but realize they are now trapped. "Hold on tight," says the first caterpillar, and he quickly chews through the branch. It snaps, and they begin to fall. But he grabs two protruding twigs and uses them to steer the branch through the air with grace and finesse. "That's amazing," says the second caterpillar. "How in the hell are you doing that?" The first caterpillar scoffs. "Am I the only one in the whole darn forest who knows how to drive a stick?" So a priest, a rabbi, and a minister decide to see who's best at his job. So they each go into the woods, find a bear, and attempt to convert it. Later, they get together. The priest begins. "When I found the bear, I read to him from the catechism and sprinkled him with holy water. Next week is his first communion. I found a bear by the stream," says the minister, "and preached God's holy word. The bear was so mesmerized that he let me baptize him." They both look down at the rabbi, who was wrapped almost head to toe in a body cast. Looking back, he sighs. "Maybe I shouldn't have started with the circumcision." So God is handing out characteristics to all of the animals, and he's getting close to the end of the list. All the animals have picked, except the lions, the beavers, and the pigs. God looks up from the list and says, "Who wants courage?" One of the pigs says to another, "Oh, we should get that." The other one says, "Nah, who wants to be courageous? You have to strut around. Humans will start hunting you. It's a huge pain. Let's wait." The lions speak up and take the courage. Next up, industrious. Who wants to be known for being industrious? The pig says, "Hey, we could definitely be that. Make stuff. Stay busy. It sounds good." The other pig says, "Are you crazy? Get up at dawn. Work all day. Who wants that? I'm sure God saved the best for last." The beavers pipe up and take industriousness, so God goes back to his list. Next up, we have wings. Who wants to fly? The first pig says, "Wow, we've got to get that one. We could fly all day." The second pig says, "Exactly. Fly around all day. Beat your wings all the time?" That sounds exhausting. You'd have to fly for hours beating your wings like mad to stay aloft. No, thank you. Let's wait for the really good stuff. God looks at his list, getting to the end. Let's see. Claws are taken. Flight went to the birds. The cheetah got speed. Okay, here we go. Who wants to be delicious? So a man walks into a shop and sees a cute little dog. He asks the shopkeeper, "Does your dog bite?" The shopkeeper says, "No, he doesn't bite." The man then tries to pet the dog and the dog bites him. "Ouch," says the man. "I thought you said your dog doesn't bite." The shopkeeper replies, "That's not my dog." So a man settles in his seat next to the window on a plane, when another man sits down next to him and seats his black Labrador retriever in between them. The first man looks very quizzically at the dog and asks why he's allowed on the plane. The second man explains that he's a DEA agent, sniffing dog. His name is Sniffer, and he's the best there is. "I'll show you once we get airborne, when I put him to work." The plane takes off, and once it has leveled out, the agent says, "Watch this." He tells Sniffer to search. Sniffer jumps down, walks along the aisle, and finally sits very purposefully next to a woman for several seconds. Sniffer then returns to its seat and puts one paw on the agent's arm. The agent says, "Good boy." And he turns to the man and says, "That woman is in possession of weed, so I'm making a note of her seat number, and the authorities will apprehend her when we land." "Say, that's pretty neat," replies the first man. Once again, the agent sends Sniffer to search the aisles. The lab sniffs about, sits down beside a man for a few seconds, returns to its seat, and this time he places two paws on the agent's arm. The agent says, "That man is carrying drugs, so again, I am making a note of his seat number for the police." "I like it," says his seatmate. The agent then tells Sniffer to search again. Sniffer walks up and down the aisles for a little while, sits down for a moment, and then comes racing back to the agent, jumps into the middle seat, and proceeds to poop all over the place. The first man is really grossed out by this behavior and can't figure out how or why a well-trained dog would act like that. So he asks the agent, "What's going on?" The agent nervously replies, "He just found a bomb." So the Presbyterian Church called a meeting to decide what to do about their squirrel infestation. After much prayer and consideration, they concluded that the squirrels were predestined to be there, and they should not interfere with God's divine will. At the Baptist Church, the squirrels had taken an interest in the baptistry. The deacons met and decided to put a water slide on the baptistry and let the squirrels drown themselves. The squirrels liked the slide and, unfortunately, knew instinctively how to swim, so twice as many squirrels showed up the following week. The Lutheran Church decided that they were not in a position to harm any of God's creatures. So, they humanely trapped their squirrels and set them free near the Baptist Church. 2 weeks later, the squirrels were back when the Baptists took down the water slide. The Episcopalians tried a much more unique path by setting out pans of whiskey around their church in an effort to kill the squirrels with alcohol poisoning. They sadly learned how much damage a band of drunk squirrels can do, but the Catholic Church came up with a more creative strategy. They baptized all the squirrels and made them members of the church. Now they only see them at Christmas and Easter. Not much was heard from the Jewish synagogue. They took the first squirrel and circumcised him. They haven't seen a squirrel since. So a man is walking along the street one morning, feeling hungry. He sees a sign in the window of a restaurant that says, "Try our exotic breakfast now." So he walks in and sits down at a table. The waitress comes over and asks what he wants. The man asks, "What's your exotic breakfast?" "Baked tongue of chicken," she proudly replies. The man shouts, "Baked tongue of chicken. Have you any idea how disgusting that is? I'd never even think about eating anything that came out of a chicken's mouth." The waitress is a little taken aback, but stays calm and asks him, "No problem, sir. What would you prefer then?" The man says, "Just bring me some scrambled eggs." So a dinosaur, a spider, and a cowboy walk into a bar. All three sit at the bar and begin drinking heavily, clearly distressed. The bartender asks them what their troubles are. The cowboy takes a shot, then says, "My horse got loose, ran into traffic, and got hit by a semi-truck carrying tanks of gasoline. It caused a whole big explosion and blew my poor horse to bits." The spider nods sympathetically. "I just lost my husband in that same fire. The driver found him, freaked out, and crashed trying to squash my dear hubby." The bartender is in shock, but finally asks the dinosaur his story. The dinosaur sniffed, took a sip from his straw, and said, "My whole family was on that truck." So a man visits a zoo and asks to speak to the director about the new rent and animal program. The zoo has fallen on hard times financially, so they decided to rent some of their animals outside the usual visitation hours. Usually it's the small, cuddly ones, but this man asks for one of the elephants. "An elephant?" the zoo director asks. "Yes, the biggest one you have, please." The man says, "Quite certain. We can do that." The director muses, "But it won't be cheap. That's $5,000 per day of rental alone and an additional $4,000 for transportation. And you'll need to feed the elephant on your own bill, too." "That will not be a problem," the man says. "I'll just need him for a day. So here's $10,000 for your troubles." With that settled, the elephant gets transported to the man's address. "Very good. Put him in the bedroom on the second floor," the man orders. The personnel tries to get the elephant into the house, but he just doesn't fit through the door. Without hesitation, the man calls a construction company and rents a crane to get the elephant up through the dismantled window and then reseal the window at horrifyingly high cost. "You know what? It is none of my business," the zoo director asks at this point, "but I must know, what is all this for?" "Well, you see," the man explains, "my wife's brother is living with us, and he's a horrible know-it-all. Every quiz show we watch, he blurts out the answers before we can even take a guess. Every morning, he solves our crossword puzzles. He has beaten me 15 times in a row at Trivial Pursuit. But this evening, he will go upstairs, come back down and say, 'Hey, guess what? There's an elephant in my bedroom.' And I won't even look up from my book and just say, 'Yes, I know.'" So little Johnny attended a horse auction with his father. He watched as his father moved from horse to horse, running his hands up and down the horse's legs and rump and chest. After a few minutes, Johnny asked, "Dad, why are you doing that?" His father replied, "Because when I'm buying horses, I have to make sure that they are healthy and in good shape before I buy." Johnny, looking worried, said, "Dad, I think the delivery guy wants to buy Mom." So on a very windy day, a rabbi was walking along when a strong gust of wind blew his hat off his head. The rabbi ran after the hat, but the wind was too strong. It kept blowing his hat farther and farther away. A non-Jewish young man, seeing what had happened, ran after the hat, caught it, and gave it back to the rabbi. The rabbi was so grateful that he gave the young man $20 and blessed him. The young man was so excited that he decided to go the racetrack, and with the rabbi's blessing, He decided to check the program and place the entire $20 on a horse. After the races, he went home and recounted his very exciting day to his father. I arrived at the 5th race and looked at the program. I saw this horse named Top Hat was running. The odds on this horse were 100 to 1. But since I received the rabbi's blessing, I bet the entire $20 on Top Hat, and guess what? He won. In the next race, there was a horse named Bowler at 30 to 1, so I bet the entire amount of my winnings on him, and guess what? I won again. "So, did you bring the money home?" asked his father. "No," said the son. "I lost it all on the last race. There was a horse named Chateau that was a heavy favorite, so I bet everything on him. And since Chateau means hat in French, I figured he was a sure thing." "You fool," said the father. "Hat in French is chapeau, not chateau." Sighing to himself, the father then asked, "So who did win the race?" "A real long shot," said the son. "Some Spanish horse named Sombrero." So, 3 house pets, a golden retriever, a parakeet, and a cat all die and go to heaven. As with all the good animals, God decides to have a personal discussion with each one to see where they will stay in heaven. God turns to the dog and says the book of life indicates that you have been a very good boy. But tell me, in your own words, what are your ultimate principles? What do you believe in? The dog says, "I believe in loyalty, companionship, and love. I have been a cherished part of my owner's family for many years." God smiles. "Truly, you have a pure and loving heart. You shall sit at my right hand." He then turns to the parakeet. "What do you believe in?" "I believe in color, flamboyance, and music," the parakeet says. "For many years, I have displayed my beautiful feathers and filled my owner's house with song. Your beauty is truly magnificent," God says, "and your song shall echo through the universe. You shall sit at my left." God finally turns to the house cat. "And you, majestic little predator, what do you believe in?" The cat lazily surveys God's throne and says, "I believe you are in my seat." So one day, an out-of-work mime is visiting the zoo and attempts to earn some money as a street performer. However, as soon as he starts to draw a crowd, the zookeeper grabs him and forcefully drags him into his office. The zookeeper then explains to the mime that the zoo's most popular attraction, a gorilla, has died suddenly. The keeper fears that attendance at the zoo will fall off. He offers the mime a job to dress up as the gorilla until they can get another one. The mime accepts. The next morning, before visitors arrive at the zoo, the mime puts on the gorilla suit and enters the cage. He discovers that it's a great job. He can sleep all he wants, play and make fun of people, and he draws bigger crowds than he ever did as a mime. However, eventually the crowds tire of him, and he gets bored just swinging on tires. He begins to notice that the people are paying more attention to the lion in the cage next to his. Not about to lose the attention of the adoring crowd, he climbs to the top of his cage, crawls across a partition, and dangles from the top to the lion's cage. Of course, this makes the lion furious, but the crowd loves it. At the end of the day, the zookeeper comes and gives the mime a raise for being such a good attraction as a gorilla. Well, this goes on for some time. The mime keeps taunting the lion, the crowds grow larger, and his salary keeps going up. Then one terrible day when he is dangling over the furious lion, He slips and falls. The mime is terrified. The lion gathers itself and prepares to pounce. The mime is so scared that he begins to run round and round the cage with the lion close behind. Finally, the mime starts screaming and yelling, "Help! Help me!" But the lion is quick and pounces. The mime soon finds himself flat on his back, looking up at the angry lion when he suddenly hears the lion whisper, "Shut up, you idiot! You want to get us both fired?" So a man walked into a pet shop and started browsing the cages. As he looked around, one monkey immediately caught his eye, not because of what it was doing, but because of the price tag, $5,000. He frowned. 5,000? Most of the other monkeys are 500 at most. Curious, he went to the shopkeeper. "Excuse me, why is that monkey so expensive?" The shopkeeper smiled. "Ah, that's our computer monkey. He knows Windows 7 and Windows 10, app programming, and if your computer ever breaks, he can fix it." "Wow," the man said, impressed. "That's a pretty good monkey, well worth the money." He kept browsing and soon spotted another monkey, this one tagged at $10,000. His eyes nearly popped out. "What about this one? What makes him worth 10 grand? The shopkeeper puffed his chest. "That's a highly specialized monkey. He knows 5 different languages and can translate fluently between all of them." The man gasped. "That's amazing. Definitely worth the price." But before he could finish admiring, the shopkeeper added, "Yeah, but if you buy one, you have to buy all 3. "All 3? The man repeated, confused. "Where's the third?" The shopkeeper pointed toward the back of the shop. There, sitting lazily in a cage, was another monkey. He wasn't doing anything at all, just staring off into space. His price tag read $20,000. The man nearly choked. $20,000. What on earth does that monkey do to justify such a ridiculous price? The shopkeeper leaned in and whispered, "To be honest, I've never actually seen him do anything. But the other 2 call him project manager." So while sports fishing off the Florida coast in Key West, a tourist capsized his boat. He could swim, but his fear of alligators kept him clinging to the overturned craft. Spotting an old man walking on the shore, the tourist shouted, "Are there any alligators in these waters?" "No," the old man hollered back. "Haven't been any for years." Feeling relieved, the tourist started swimming leisurely toward the shore. About halfway toward shore, he asked the old man, "Say, how'd you get rid of the gators anyway?" "We didn't do anything," the old man said. "The sharks got them." So on the first day, God created the dog and said, "Sit all day by the door of your house and bark at anyone who comes in or walks past. For this, I will give you a lifespan of 20 years. The dog said, "That's a long time to be barking. How about only 10 years, and I'll give you back the other 10. God agreed. On the second day, God created the monkey and said, "Entertain people, do tricks, and make them laugh. For this, I'll give you a 20-year lifespan." The monkey said, "Monkey tricks for 20 years? That's a pretty long time to perform. How about I give you back 10 like the dog did?" And God agreed. On the third day, God created the cow and said, "You must go into the field with the farmer all day long and suffer under the sun, have calves and give milk to support the farmer's family. For this, I will give you a lifespan of 60 years. The cow said, "That's kind of a tough life you want me to live for 60 years. How about 20 and I'll give back the other 40? And again God agreed. On the fourth day, God created humans and said, "Eat, sleep, play, marry, and enjoy your life. For this, I'll give you 20 years." But the human said, "Only 20 years? Could you possibly give me my 20? The 40 the cow gave back, the 10 the monkey gave back, and the 10 the dog gave back. That makes 80, okay?" "Okay," said God, "you asked for it. So that is why, for our first 20 years, we eat, sleep, play, and enjoy ourselves. For the next 40 years, we slave in the sun to support our family. For the next 10 years, we pull monkey tricks to entertain the grandchildren. And for the last 10 years, we sit on the front porch and bark at everyone."